Ladies and gentlemen, now hosting the RizzoCast, put your hands together for Steven Risotto!
What's going on, everybody, and welcome. This is episode number 91 of RizzoCast, and a great big Happy New Year to everybody out here. This is the first episode of the year, and I'm pleased to be joined today by a very special guest. It is Dr. Jim Afremow, a sports psychology consultant and author of The Leader's Mind, The Champion's Mind, The Champion's Comeback, and The Young Champion's Mind. And Dr. Jim Afremow joins us here, and you guys could follow him on Twitter, of course. His @ is at Gold Medal Mind. So go ahead, check that out at Gold Medal Mind. How you doing, Dr. Jim? Welcome to the show, and Happy New Year.
Thanks so much, Stephen, for having me on. Happy New Year as well, and to all your listeners.
Absolutely. How was your holiday season? Did everything go smoothly?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was nice to take a little bit of rest and recovery. I like to tell athletes that you have to relax it after you max it. So you got to work hard, but then you also have to rest well. So we were able to spend some quality family time over the holidays, which was really nice.
Yeah, and this was the time for athletes to rest for sure. Of course, during break, there's a lot of time off. So I first want to touch on your book, your most recent book, The Leader's Mind, which is currently in stores and on Amazon. You could get the audiobook. I know that's popular as well. So tell me a little bit about it and what readers should expect while digging into The Leader's Mind.
Absolutely. So what my passion has been sports psychology for quite some time, and I love writing books about the mental game. And of course, I touch on leadership and teamwork, but I've really noticed more and more that the teams that really win and sustain excellence, it's obvious, but they just have a lot of great leaders on the team. When the Giants were winning the World Series, there was just, the team was filled with really good leadership and, from top to bottom. And so I wanted to do sort of that deep dive into leadership and teamed up with collaborator Phil White. We work on several projects together. And for the book, we interviewed different folks from different achievement domains. So we have a pilot, we have a firefighter, we have a college coach from Stanford. We have, we have Steve Kerr highlighted one of the chapters. And then we even look at Marcus Aurelius, the famous Roman emperor. And so each chapter is sort of like a case study on leadership. And what really pops out is just, that good leadership is something that we all can do in our own lives and in all areas of our work. And so it's a lot of fun. We're already getting a lot of great feedback about the book.
Absolutely. That's great to hear. And what are some of the misinterpretations of sports psychology or someone in your position? Because I know oftentimes they're looked at as something athletes go to as a last resort, or if athletes are soft, they have to see a sports psychologist. And that's kind of been at least from what I've heard, the norm when it comes to sports psychology. And you and I both know that that's not the case. So what are some of the misinterpretations that you've heard about the industry and the profession?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Stephen, with that sports psychology is for only for someone that's dealing with a slump or an injury or something isn't really going well. And imagine if we looked at strength and conditioning that way. That strength and conditioning, is only for someone that isn't strong or is not playing well. So I look at sports psychology as the science of success, really, which is how to think, feel, and act like a champion in everything that we do. And so the good news is that more and more athletes and teams, and even corporate athletes, so to speak, others, in music, performing arts, the business world, are looking at sports psychology the right way now in terms of, hey, I want every edge I can get. And I know that the mental game is an important way to, improve my game and be more consistent with my performance. So that's really exciting for me, is that athletes are now calling me and saying, hey, things are going pretty well. I just want to see how good I can get in my sport.
And it is confidence, because I know you work, a lot of your work has to do with defining a champion and giving tips on what it takes to have that champion's mindset. And obviously, I think confidence plays a really big part in that. Is that the most important thing when it comes to building that champion mind? And I know this is in a lot of your books, so you could kind of paraphrase here, but is confidence what, I guess the right question should be, what role does confidence play in everything and in building a mindset that works?
Yeah, confidence to me is, I would say that the four big C words that I use a lot in my work are confidence, concentration, composure, and commitment. And Jack Nicklaus, the famous golfer, said that confidence is the single most important factor in golf. That's the way he looked at it. And he said probably in life as well. And, who am I to argue with Jack Nicklaus? So I'm big on confidence. I think confidence is king. If you don't believe in yourself and you don't trust your talent and your training, then it doesn't matter how good you are physically. And so to me, it all starts from within, which is, having big dreams, big goals, important values, and then believing that you're going to find a way to accomplish what you want. And that's so important because, as you move up the ranks in your sport, it just gets harder and harder on the physical side. And so the margin for error gets so tiny that you have to really believe in yourself. Otherwise, you're going to psych yourself out and get in your own way.
100%. And you've worked with athletes and personnel at the college and high school levels in your career. Those are two levels that are vastly different. In my mind, there's a lot of filtering out that goes on, I think, during the transition. Obviously there's the talent, good players and mentally stronger players move on, whereas maybe, bad players, less skilled players, and maybe not so developed in the mind don't move on. Is that kind of the reasoning there? Is that kind of your philosophy on it as well?
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of the top high school athletes, they don't always necessarily have to have a great mental game because physically they're so much, more superior than their counterparts. But, at the college level, a lot of athletes that I've worked with, man, they really hit a wall right off the bat because it's like, I was the big fish, in the little pond in high school. Now everyone's a big fish. And so they start questioning themselves, like, am I as good as I thought I was? Can I really do this? Do I have what it takes? Imagine being a wrestler, for example, and then going to Iowa or Oklahoma State or, one of these top programs, and you could use that example across any sport, but, you're not the one that really stands out maybe right now. And so you might have to, take your turn. And that could be for several years until you become, you reach the top. I remember one Iowa wrestler told me, I would get throttled basically every day at practice, and then eventually, he became the guy that could do a little bit of the throttling. But same in baseball. I worked at Arizona State University for about a decade, and a lot of the baseball guys that would, start with the program, they weren't used to adversity, but then all of a sudden, when you're facing, UCLA and Oregon State and all these great programs, you better start having the mental game buttoned up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't tell you, Dr. Afremow, how many players I've seen quit sports because of tough coaches and, coaches that they deem maybe overly strict and unfair and biased. And more coaches are being hired now in sports because of their leadership and their communication skills. There might be some more qualified, say if you're hiring a basketball coach, there might be more qualified basketball minds, but the guy that is able to communicate with his players is probably going to get the job more so. So how much of a positive trend and a game changer is that development to kind of bring in more communicators into the industry of coaching?
Yeah, relationship building is key, and that's what we talk about in the Leader's Mind book. Especially nowadays, I think, 20, 30, 40 years ago, you could be that kind of, the leader that pounds the desk and demands a lot from everyone, and they just kind of get in line. But now people want to know, athletes and others want to know, does coach care about me? Can I trust coach? Does coach, can coach help me? And they want a relationship with their coaches and their teammates. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's also important for athletes to be able to be their own best coach, because, coaching isn't a game of perfect either, just like sports isn't a game of perfect. And so, there's no such thing as a perfect coach, no such thing as a perfect athlete. And so, we got to get mentally tough in terms of being able to handle anything that comes our way. But I agree with you. The best teams that I've been around are usually the closest teams. And that starts from, the leader really sets the tone for that, the coach.
Yeah, and on the other side of it, I'm sure you've dealt with your fair share of parents over the years, and this is a hotly contested, discussion, and they tend to be intense sometimes, or they tend to be intense sometimes, and we've seen multiple stories of parents, wanting to live out their dreams through their children or their child. So, what are kind of some of your experiences coaching them alongside their children as well, because I'm sure it's not all that easy?
Yeah, parents, again, when you think about it, their children are the most important thing in the world to them. So, they're going to be really emotionally involved, and that could cut both ways. And so, I love working with parents when I work with younger athletes, because to try to help everyone be on the same page. And so, when I talk with parents, we talk about, I love the analogy of a rowboat. That you want everyone, the family in the rowboat together, rowing at the same speed. And so, because if the kid's rowing too fast, the parent sometimes needs to catch up, and and then vice versa. I do think that I do like the saying that it's okay to push your kids, just don't shove them. If we didn't push our kids a little bit, then and it's positive pushing, it's not negative pushing. But so parents, they have to find that balance between pushing, but not shoving, and realizing that that coaches and others, need to be the ones that really are the ones teaching the physical skills. And parents can provide a lot of support and understanding, around the ups and downs of their kids' participation in the sport.
And I want to get into some preparation next, because I know preparation is a key building block there in order to have a strong mental mindset while doing anything, to be honest, but playing sports. So how important is preparation when it comes to success? Is being ready a skill that takes a long time to develop?
Well, I think that, whatever we practice tends to grow. So if we could practice mental skills and strategies, and having a good attitude and outlook each day, that's going to really pay off on game day. And so the neat thing about sports psychology is a lot of the mental skills and strategies that I teach and others teach in the field really don't need to take up too much time. And a lot of times we could do them in parallel with what we're doing, So for example, at practice, you could work on body language, you could work on positive self-talk, you could work on, visualizing your success while you're waiting in line to perform a drill. So there are plenty of opportunities, even breathing techniques, there are plenty of opportunities to practice these mental skills and strategies to make them more automatic when it's time to really compete, and when it counts the most.
So right now we're dealing with so much struggle right now in the world, especially athletes and the young athlete. I mean, there's positive COVID tests right now messing with maybe consistent playing time at the college and high school level. Even in the NBA, I mean, players are going on health and protocol. I know it's starting to decline a little bit, those numbers, but it's definitely alarming, and it could screw up some consistency, I'm sure. So what are some of your keys when it comes to dealing with adversity and bouncing back from maybe some of the low points?
Yeah, well, one is, kind of expect the best, but be prepared for everything. And when adversity does strike, we always have a choice. And you could choose to, kind of let it beat you down and give up, or you could choose to, kind of, spark some competitive fire. And so, right off the bat, I like the idea of that when adversity strikes, look at it as a challenge to meet rather than a threat to avoid. And think about how you're going to grow through this time, not just get through this time. The other thing too is to really have some good resources around you, books and also people. And when I was in the baseball world, there was a saying, at the major league level, never suffer alone. Always have a go-to person. And sometimes when we're just stuck in our own head, that's tough for athletes because athletes want to feel kind of self-made. But having a go-to person where you could talk about, man, I'm having a hard day, or I'm going through a rough patch, or I have a lot on my mind, can make a massive difference.
And I do also want to ask about philosophy or on manifesting or visualization, because this is something that in high school, when I was playing high school baseball here in the Bay Area, before each game we would go out down the left field line and we would swing our bat with our eyes closed and visualize ourselves hitting like a walk-off home run or something absurd like that, or at least absurd for me. No, that's why I'm here now and not playing college baseball. But and many athletes envision themselves as the league MVPs, or like I just mentioned, hitting a home run in a big spot. Is that effective thinking to utilize visualization and manifestation?
Absolutely. I've been fortunate enough to work with all pros in football and World Series champions in baseball and Olympic gold medalists, and the best of the best love visualization. Not only do they visualize their success, but they visualize this the steps to achieve their success. And so I think filling your head with positive pictures and getting that good feeling inside your body is really important. Use your imagination to your advantage. Most of us picture bad things happening, but with visualization, you could imagine, number one, overcoming those bad things if they do happen, but then also visualize yourself the way you want to play and being the player that you want to be. And that's just one tool that I don't think that most of us use as much as we can. I know, it's kind of a silly example, but when I was working on my first book, The Champion's Mind, I'm not naturally a writer, so writing's hard for me. So what helped me when my motivation would take a hit was to visualize myself holding the final product. And that kind of gave me that little extra motivation to, okay, sit down and write for a couple hours, and stick with it. And then one day I actually held the final product in my hands, and it was just such an amazing feeling. I love the story of Andre Agassi, the famous tennis player. He said the first time he won Wimbledon, he said he didn't know, and for a few moments, he didn't know if it was a dream or not, because he had visualized himself winning it so many times.
That's awesome. And I would definitely advise for all athletes to do that as well. I think it's visualization, and even anybody, like you just mentioned, how, writing your book and having the finished project and visualizing that. I think it's a really, really important key, and it is effective. How do you view team sports compared to maybe individual sports? Because, I know for team sports, I feel at least that some players feel like they could, maybe hide a little bit and not put the full effort in, and feel like they could hide because there's other players on the team that are also carrying a part of the load. Meanwhile, individual sports, if, you're in the Olympics for, wrestling, it's just you, so that you don't really have anybody else that you could rely on. So, where do you see, I don't want to keep saying, what's your philosophy on this? What's your philosophy on that? But what is kind of the difference between those two in terms of, having a champion's mindset with maybe not putting in full effort, but also not hiding to any challenges?
Yeah, well, you bring up, a good point that when we're in groups, sometimes our effort level goes down because, we could hide in the trees, like you're saying. And, like think about in school, like when you have a group project, sometimes we everyone wants to kind of, put off the responsibility onto someone else to do most of the work. But whereas if, it's your own project at school, then, you get all the credit or all the blame, so to speak. But Being a great teammate and a leader is key when you're part of obviously part of a group or play a team sport, because there's going to be times where you're not playing well, but the team is playing well. And then there's going to be times where you're playing well, but the team's not playing well, or, getting good results. And so the one thing that I picked up, one of the things that I picked up that is really important is being a reliable guy or gal in a team sport. And coaches and teammates love to know what to expect from you each and every day. And so, you don't have to be one sort of personality. You just need to be your personality, but be consistent with that personality. And I love what Tom Brady recently said. He said, my favorite teammates are the ones I have to think about the least, because I know they're doing their job. I know they're taking care of business. I know that they're, acting in a way that's positive. When it's time to practice or play, they're there for us. And so that is so important. The individual sport can be a little bit lonely at times because there's no one really to lean on, or, not a lot of times to pick you up. And so that's where, again, you have to be your own best teammate when you play an individual sport.
And that leads me into my next point here is, this summer we saw the best Olympic gymnast of all time, or at least in the States, Simone Biles, withdraw from during the midst of the Summer Olympics, citing mental health issues. And there's so much chatter about this, and about whether she's a quitter or whether this is a symbolic and powerful move that, needs to be applauded. I want to tread lightly with this one in this specific case, because I don't want to put you on the spot here, or put myself on the spot, because we don't know her personally. And we don't know about her mental state at all. But let's talk hypothetically here. And if someone is in this situation, would that be considered a lack of preparation, or is it something that you can't necessarily prepare for in that specific situation? Not necessarily Simone Biles, but in that specific situation.
Well, what's really interesting is, we talked about confidence earlier. Sometimes confidence can take a hit at different times. So, for example, in high school, you might be the most confident player, but then when you move to college, you might think, well, man, how, can I really believe in myself and my game? And then you might get going again, but then now you're pro, or now you're an Olympic athlete, and then your confidence might take another hit, because again, it's the the competition has just gotten just crazy good. So with her, it's hard to tell in terms of, at the end of her career. Also, mental health issues. I like to say that, that there's no health without mental health. And so sometimes we confuse sports psychology, like confidence, concentration, composure, and commitment, and competitiveness, if you wanted to add another C word, with mental health issues. And if you're dealing with really serious mental health issues, it's hard to function at that level. And then, with gymnastics especially, you could really injure yourself, and really hurt yourself badly. It's not like, not to put down any other sport, but, you're probably not at risk of losing your life if you're, or paralyzing yourself, if you're playing, squash or something. But, even though those are killer athletes too, it's just, you're not going to fall off a beam that's only a few inches wide onto your head. So with her, very few people can identify what being in that pressure, that, being in that cauldron that she was in. I do think it took a lot of courage to say, look, I can't do this. Whether it was, we don't know exactly what was going on, or what was going on with their teammates, but, I do like how they all came together. I also know that, in terms of context, what was tricky with that situation is, the whole issue with the child abuse. And I don't know how involved she was with that, but that's something that's affected everyone in gymnastics. And so there was just so much going on. I had a lot of compassion and empathy for her, but also the whole gymnastics team.
Oh, absolutely. And that was something that escaped my mind when I first saw it as well. So let's get into your career a little bit, for a second. Why sports psychology? Why was that a path that you wanted to pursue? What was so intriguing about it?
Well, what's interesting is I grew up playing a variety of different sports, and pretty active family in terms of we go hiking or camping, and even mountain climbing, non-technical kind of stuff. But so I was always really active, and uh, you know just like any other athlete, I would either get in a slump or hit a performance wall, or get nervous before the big game, so to speak, or just have these kind of mental game challenges. And back when I was playing, it was a while ago, it wasn't that long ago, but I would ask questions to coaches or my dad or teammates, and hey, what do you do when you're nervous, or what do you do when you feel like you're not making any progress in your sport? You've kind of hit a plateau, and you know, there was never any good answers. It was always like, oh, just take a deep breath, or don't worry about it, or and there was still a little bit of that. You're either born with some of this stuff or you're not. And I was always interested in psychology as well, just kind of what makes people tick. And so I started actually, studied psychology at University of Oregon. Then I went on and studied experimental psychology for a little bit. And that's when I first started learning about sports psychology, and I didn't even know it was a field. And so, wow, visualization, positive self-talk, goal setting, all these things. Why didn't I learn about this stuff earlier or in school? These are life skills. And so, anyway, I ended up switching schools. I went to Michigan State and I studied sports psychology there. Great program. Very fortunate to go there. And then I started realizing too that, like we were talking about mental health issues, I started realizing, look, I want to work with the whole athlete. And so I also got a master's in counseling. But I love it because I use all the skills and strategies for in my own life. But I love the idea of being able to help others. And I love that, again, that sports psychology is really expanding to more performance psychology, which is, we're all performers at some level. So all of us could benefit from working or learning more about sports psychology.
100%. And I'm glad you didn't date yourself there at the beginning of that. Wasn't that long ago,
Yeah, I almost
Uh,
did.
and you mentioned earlier that you worked at ASU for nearly a decade. Is there more reward when working with younger people because maybe they haven't reached their peak of their abilities yet, compared to maybe older people who have already made the mistakes, while younger people maybe it's preventable?
Yeah, so working at ASU, that's a great question, because a lot of the student athletes that I'd work with, and I love working across all the different sports, would say, "Man, I wish I had learned this when I was in high school," because then it'd be more automatic by now, or I wouldn't have struggled so much my first year in college. But it's really rewarding. I used to tell the athletes, "Look, the 4 or 5 years you're here." At ASU are really going to determine the next 40, 50 years of your life. So let's really get your mental game buttoned up, not only for sport, but also for school and life. And so I do find that really rewarding. I also find it really rewarding working with some of the better athletes in the world who, man, I put my whole life into this, and, here's my shot. And they're so committed. It's so fun working with someone that's that committed, where they will leave no stone unturned, and they want it so badly, and they're willing to do whatever it takes. That's just fun because it inspires me to be my best as well.
And then, of course, you had a role with the San Francisco Giants, serving as their peak performance coordinator for a few years. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Oh, just a wonderful experience. What a great organization. What a great city. What a great, just great group of fans. But I spent 3 years working with the organization, and met all the great players, and worked with players at all different levels of the organization. Great staff members, great coaches. It was so fun working with guys that were from the U.S., but also guys from the DR, Venezuela, from all over the world. And so that was neat from a cultural perspective, getting to learn about different cultures. And I wish I could have, I wish I could speak Spanish. So, but some of the guys try to teach me a little bit. But it was great. The organization, it was a little bit of a tough patch for the organization, because after winning 3 World Series, there was a little bit of a letdown, and Bochy had some, some health issues, but just some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And so, what a great season this past year. I've been fortunate enough; a lot of guys still will reach out to me, and so I've started working with guys from different organizations as well. But Yeah, I've had guys reach out to me and say, "Hey, I want to keep working with you," or "Hey, things were going pretty good when you were with the organization. I'd love to work with you now." Yeah, baseball. I love the sport of baseball, and I really didn't appreciate how challenging it is because you play 162 games in 180 days, and then you have spring training, you have the All-Star game, which some of the guys would play in, and then obviously the playoffs. So, I mean, it's every day. And so that's fun. There's a game every day almost. So I love that. And then going around the minor league system was fun because, we had a team in San Jose, but we had a team in, obviously in Sacramento as well. But there was a team in Richmond, Virginia, and then there was a team in Augusta, Georgia. So that was a lot of fun seeing the guys on the road and seeing some of these guys coming out of high school or college that were just sponges. They just wanted to learn as much as they could about the mental game and just about all aspects of baseball. So what a wonderful sport.
Absolutely. I concur 100%. And that's one of the things that they tell us in journalism school is learn Spanish. So I got to get on my high horse and start doing that. So before we wrap up,
you're young enough. You're young enough where you could pick it up quicker than I can. But with the growth mindset, we could both learn it.
Yeah. Hola. There we go. Done.
There we go. Yeah, my wife speaks Spanish and Portuguese, so I'm jealous. That's one of the things, in terms of regrets. I always like to, think about like how to avoid future regrets. But and I'm, a little bit of tongue in cheek here, but I, if I could rewind the clock, I would definitely have taken languages more seriously when I was, when I was a student.
Yeah, it was required at my high school to take 2 years of one foreign language, and
Oh, I love
I
it.
picked Spanish because I knew that would be the most usable and the most common secondary language I could learn. And I didn't put in effort, and I probably should have. And hey, there's still time, as you mentioned. There's still time. You and I could both learn it. We'll succeed together. We'll graduate together. We'll take courses. We'll do Duolingo. We will do it. I guarantee it.
Excellent.
Yeah, excellent. There we go. See, we're learning already on the fly.
That's right.
Before we wrap up here, I do want to ask, are there any more books in the work coming up?
Well, so Phil and I mentioned him. He's a professional writer. The first 3 books I wrote were all on my own, and boy, that was a challenging process, but super rewarding. And then we teamed up on The Leader's Mind, but we have probably about 10 books we'd like to write together. So exploring different aspects of high performance or culture or teamwork, those kind of things. So I'm excited about future projects. And currently right now, I'm just doing a lot of private practice work. So I'm working with people from all over the world. And, thank goodness for Zoom. That's, made, being on podcasts such as such as yours, such a fun experience, but then also being able to work with people and travel a little bit less. That's one thing I really empathize with, folks in the baseball world is there's a lot of time on buses and planes. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to believe Zoom was around before COVID. It's like, wow, we didn't realize that this was a thing before, but
that's right.
Yeah. So now we know. Jim or Dr. Jim, I don't want to, I feel whenever I see a doctor or anybody in the medical field, I cannot call them anything other than doctor. So we have to stick with Dr. Jim Afremow. I appreciate you coming on. This was so much fun. And I think the listeners and the viewers definitely got a lot out of it.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Yeah, I'd encourage everyone is, the goal is to think gold and never settle for silver. And that's my little mantra. And basically it's just be the best you can be and look at each day as, love the challenge of each day, no matter what it is. And that's how you live a gold medal life.
Absolutely. And you guys could follow Dr. Jim Afremow on Twitter at Gold Medal Mind. So check his work out there. A lot of good stuff. And of course, his books are available all over the place. It's linked to his Twitter page, The Leader's Mind, The Champion's Mind, The Champion's Comeback, and The Young Champion's Mind. So go check those out. Absolutely, for sure. And then, of course, you guys could check out the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, wherever you find your podcast, and on Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast. Thank you guys for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day. Have a happy new year. Again, still the beginning of the year. Make your New Year's resolution. We should have asked about that. I guess there's still time. Is there any philosophy on the New Year's resolution? Is that an effective thing?
Well, I do love the idea of having clarity, in terms of goals and areas of your life that you want to take up a notch. Kind of a tough question, though, I'll ask folks is, given that this is what you want to accomplish, what's probably going to be a couple ways that you're going to sabotage yourself? And so, kind of, be honest with yourself, look in the mirror, this is my goal. Okay. How am I going to probably get off track or get my own way or give up on it? And then resolve to prepare to overcome those challenges. So when they pop up, in terms of not feeling like you want to do it or doing things that get in the way of your goals and values, that you'll be kind of mentally prepared to overcome them. So have big goals and dreams, but also be prepared to overcome that inner resistance and tell yourself that, I'm worth it. And I have what it takes to overcome that discomfort in terms of reaching my big picture goals.
'Tis the season of figuring out who doesn't belong in the gym and who's new. So there we go. That's the time of the year. All right. Thank you guys for listening again, and enjoy the rest of your day. See you next time.